He wasn't a spy. He wasn't a killer. He was just a man who refused to let the system forget his wife.
Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Charlie, I think you need to see this.
What is this?
Your wife has been killed.
I want mission-specific training, cash, and a new identity.
Have you lost your mind?
I want to find and kill the people who murdered my wife. You held a gun to my wife's head.
You have the wrong person.
No, I have exactly the right person.
Inside a dim garage, Charlie Heller works on repairing a small Cessna, a birthday gift from his wife, Sarah. Moments later, she steps in and tells him her car is almost there, as she's heading to London for a business trip. With a faint smile, Sarah admits she has no idea how she'll survive 5 days without his coffee. She asks him again to come along, but Charlie gently declines, saying work is waiting for him at the office. He promises next time. He walks her outside, and they say their goodbyes. An hour later, Charlie arrives at CIA headquarters in Langley, where he works in decryption and analysis. On his way inside, he runs into a field agent known as the Bear. Years ago, Charlie saved his life by guiding him out of an ambush remotely, earning his deep respect. Charlie heads upstairs. As he steps out of the elevator, a high-tech scanner checks his face and scans for foreign objects, a system he designed himself, boasting an IQ of 170. He settles into his office and gets to work. Soon, a message pops up from Inquiline, a mysterious contact he's been dealing with for 5 years, trading him classified intel. After sending over new files, Inquiline warns him they could compromise the entire agency.
Be careful with this data. It's highly compromising for your agency.
Charlie once again tries to track their location, guessing Istanbul, but gets brushed aside. He begins decoding the files, but struggles to break through. Later, at lunch, coworkers are surprised that someone as quiet and introverted as Charlie is close with the charismatic Bear. Back at his desk, still working, Sarah calls. She tells him she landed. He casually says he already knows, since he tracked her. She jokes and asks what he's wearing. Busy, he says he'll call her back and hangs up. Determined, Charlie enters a restricted area to use better tools. After pushing hard, he finally cracks it. What he finds is explosive. Classified U.S. files revealing a drone strike disguised as a suicide bombing, completely covered up. A report inside lists 50 dead, including Danish officers and U.S. Marines. Even worse, it was ordered by his own boss, Chief Moore. That night, Charlie tries calling Sarah, but she doesn't answer. The next morning, Charlie heads into work as usual, but something feels off when he sees Chief Moore waiting for him. Moore calmly tells him to follow him to the director's office. Inside, Charlie meets the newly appointed Director O'Brien. With a heavy tone, she explains there's been a terrorist attack at the Christopher Street Hotel in London, and Sarah was among the victims. Charlie freezes. He insists she's still at her conference, but Moore turns on the news. A breaking report reveals 4 assailants stormed the hotel, took hostages, and killed 2 people, including an American woman. Moore then shows surveillance footage from the hotel, confirming Charlie's worst fear. Sarah is gone. Charlie returns home, hoping for some peace, but instead finds reporters swarming outside, making everything worse. The next morning, he heads to the executive floor and confronts Chief Moore and Senior CIA Supervisor Caleb, demanding justice for his wife's death. He questions how the attackers managed to slip past London's massive surveillance network. Moore promises they'll investigate, but Caleb cuts in, telling Charlie to focus on his health first. The next day, Sarah's body and belongings arrive by plane. Charlie opens her suitcase and finds a small gift she had planned to give him. As he reads a note she left behind, he breaks down. Determined, he begins researching the attack, but the memory of Sarah's fear overwhelms him, and he shuts everything down. Back at work, Charlie hacks into the hotel's systems and nearby surveillance cameras. Presenting his findings to his superiors, he lays out a precise timeline. The four-person team stole a getaway vehicle in the East End early in the morning. They entered the hotel through a service entrance and later met with a firm called Impact Investments before things turned violent. When security intervened, the attackers killed him and took hostages. Sarah was taken because she tried to protect someone. Charlie also reveals he ran voice and facial recognition, identifying the man holding Sarah as Mishka Blazik from Moscow. The second man is Lawrence Elish, a former South African Special Forces operative. By analyzing city cameras, dash cams, and body cam footage, Charlie identifies a third man, Horst Schiller, a mercenary tied to contracts and the one who pulled the trigger. The fourth is Gretchen, a former intelligence officer now in Paris. From their reactions, Charlie realizes Moore and Caleb already knew. Moore simply orders him to attend therapy. During therapy, Charlie admits his guilt for not going with Sarah and his anger toward the agency's indifference. The therapist tells him he has to accept her death, but Charlie refuses. The next morning, he hides a chip inside his ID badge. Slipping past security, he enters his department and starts copying classified files. That night, Charlie goes to a bar. After a moment, the owner asks him to watch the place while he heads to the back to restock. As Charlie waits, his attention drifts to an old jukebox in the corner. The next morning, armed with evidence, Charlie confronts Moore and Caleb. He lists Moore's unauthorized black ops missions, from bombing a Syrian hospital to striking an Allied base in Yemen, costing countless civilian lives. Moore laughs it off, claiming Charlie has no proof, but Charlie points to signatures tying Moore directly to the operations and threatens to expose everything to the director. Then he reveals he has activated a dead man switch. If he doesn't enter a code, every 5 hours, the evidence will be sent to 3 major journalists. His demands are clear: full CIA training, fake passports, cash, a weapon, and intel on Sarah's killers. At first, they laugh, but quickly realize he's serious. Reluctantly, they agree. Outside, Charlie reaches his car and suddenly throws up from stress. Back upstairs, Moore assumes Charlie is bluffing about the dead man switch. Caleb warns they can't take that risk. They decide to search for the trigger, and if it turns out to be fake, they can arrange an accident during training. Later, Caleb and the team try to figure out how Charlie managed to extract confidential files. One agent suggests he used a skimmer, a device that copies data from electronic systems, but another argues their systems are too secure. Then someone points out that skimmers can be used on printers. They conclude Charlie likely routed files through a printer, modified its software, and used a magnetic strip to copy the data. What they still can't explain is how he got the chip past security. Reviewing footage, they discover that days earlier, Charlie had purchased a magnetic strip at Best Buy. Meanwhile, Charlie arrives at a training facility where he meets his instructor, retired Colonel Henderson, who comes across as cold and distant. During training, Charlie struggles with basic firearms, barely keeping up. But when they move on to building explosives, he quickly assembles one with surprising precision. Henderson watches closely, clearly impressed. Charlie may not be skilled with guns, but he has a natural talent for explosives. Henderson also prepares multiple fake passports for him. Back at the CIA, agents discover Charlie had been visiting a specific bar regularly. When they investigate, they find a cassette hidden beneath the jukebox. That night, Henderson enters Charlie's room and tells him plainly, "You're not a killer." Charlie insists he will kill the person responsible for his wife's death. Henderson pulls out his gun and hands it to him, telling him to aim at his chest. Charlie's hands shake, and he lowers the weapon. Henderson warns him that he's not stupid, but chasing a terrorist network while being hunted by the CIA is suicide. Then he leaves. Back at the CIA, agents spend hours decrypting the cassette. After nearly 5 hours, they uncover the truth. Charlie had been bluffing about the dead man switch. They immediately inform Moore. But what Moore and Caleb don't know is that Charlie is listening in from his room. The chip he hid in his ID badge was actually a bug placed on the Black Ops file he handed to Moore. Moore quickly calls Henderson and orders him to apprehend Charlie. But Charlie is already ahead of them, escaping with a fake passport and cash. Furious, Moore ends the call. He then examines the files Charlie gave them and discovers the bug. Bugging a CIA officer is treason, Moore mutters. An hour later, Charlie is on a flight to London, his thoughts drifting back to the moment his wife gave him the plane, slightly damaged, but meaningful. At the checkpoint, after his identity is verified, Charlie is cleared to proceed. Back at the CIA, Caleb informs Moore that Charlie's fake passport has been flagged. He's now en route to Paris. Wanting to keep everything quiet, Moore orders Caleb to send Henderson to track him down. Meanwhile, Charlie walks through the crowded streets of Paris and checks into a hotel near the restaurant where Gretchen is often seen. When he spots her, he discreetly plants a tracker on her phone. That night, he heads to her apartment building. After confirming she's not inside, he approaches the entrance. Without the access code, he waits until another resident opens the door and quietly slips in. Once inside, Charlie watches a tutorial on lockpicking and manages to get through the door. He quickly takes photos of her schedule and opens a drawer, finding a gun. His mind flashes back to Henderson telling him he's not a killer. Trying to prove him wrong, Charlie picks up the gun and waits. But when the moment comes, he can't do it. He leaves and returns to his hotel. Looking over the photos, he notices Gretchen is receiving treatment at a hospital for severe allergies. Suddenly, he imagines Sarah gently telling him to rest, but it's only in his head. The next morning, Charlie buys a bouquet of flowers. Soon after, he sees Gretchen entering the hospital and follows her inside. While a doctor steps away to fix a malfunctioning screen, Charlie takes the opportunity to slip into the room. He fills Gretchen's chamber with a concentrated dose of pollen, triggering a violent allergic reaction. As she struggles, Charlie begs her to reveal Schiller's location, telling her Schiller is responsible for Sarah's death. Gretchen refuses. Charlie opens the chamber, hoping she'll give in, but she attacks him. She manages to escape, but as Charlie chases her outside, she's hit by a passing car. Staying composed, Charlie takes her phone and quickly leaves the scene. Back in his hotel room, he begins packing and soon boards a bus to Marseilles, haunted by memories of Sarah. Back at the CIA, Director O'Brien questions Moore about Gretchen's death, especially with pressure building from the French ambassador. Moore responds coldly, suggesting it looks like one of their own may have taken her out. Later that night, Charlie enters a local bar, hoping to clear his head. Instead, he's confronted by memories of the people who have died because of him. Suddenly, he spots Henderson. Startled, Charlie bolts, with Henderson close behind. He ducks into another bar and hides in the bathroom, waiting for the right moment. A few minutes later, he steps out, and the two come face to face. Charlie asks how Henderson found him. With a slight grin, Henderson explains he tracked Gretchen's phone after Charlie took it, calling it a rookie mistake. He adds that no matter how smart someone is, panic always makes them slip. Henderson tells him he doesn't want to arrest him, but he has no choice. Even so, he admits Charlie has surprised him. Then Charlie calmly says, "I set a bomb," and runs. Seconds later, chaos erupts in the bar. The next morning, Charlie sends a message to Inquiline asking for help. After confirming a meeting point, he boards a cargo plane to Istanbul. Once he arrives, he heads to a small, unremarkable restaurant and texts Inquiline. A nearby phone rings, and Charlie approaches the man, but before he can speak, a woman steps in and tells him that's not who he's looking for. She tells him to follow her. Inquiline is not what Charlie expected. She asks why he reached out, and Charlie explains everything about his wife's death. She listens carefully and admits she already knew. She takes him to her home. On the way, Charlie asks how long she's been in the hacking world. She tells him 5 years, ever since her husband died. He had been a CIA asset and formerly worked with Russian intelligence. He was the original Inquiline. Before he died, he taught her everything: how to encrypt, how to navigate systems, how to survive. Charlie offers his condolences. She explains the official story was that her husband fell from a window, an accident. She also reveals she still maintains contact with Charlie's department in case she ever needs leverage. When they arrive, she quietly admits it's the only place she's managed to stay for more than 3 years. She's tired of running. Charlie asks what she'll do if the Russians come. She pulls out a gun. He doubts it will stop them, but she calmly says it isn't for them. It's for herself. Now fully aligned, Charlie and Inquiline begin working together. Charlie identifies Schiller as the leader of the group, the man responsible for sourcing mercenaries for operations tied to people like Chief Moore. The second target, Lawrence Elish, is known for trafficking weapons, buying low and selling high across global markets. Inquiline suggests posing as a seller offering discounted weapons to draw him out, and Charlie agrees. Then there's Mishka. Charlie explains that Mishka is flashy, constantly traveling and posting online. Using one of his social media photos, Charlie starts breaking down details. The vineyard behind him looks larger than most, suggesting a warmer region. The way sunlight hits the wine glass indicates the rows are aligned north to south, and a church in the background resembles Spanish architecture. There's also a faint reflection in the glass, possibly another person, likely Mishka's girlfriend. Inquiline runs facial recognition and identifies the woman. Her social media shows she was recently in Madrid. The next day, Director O'Brien delivers a public speech about restoring American strength on the global stage. At the same time, Caleb instructs his team to monitor all three targets, Schiller, Elish, and Mishka, knowing Charlie may be coming for them. Later that day, O'Brien meets with Moore and directly questions his actions. Though newly appointed, she makes it clear she suspects he's been operating without oversight and warns him to stop unauthorized black ops immediately. Moore responds with a calm, almost mocking tone, telling her she has his full support, then recounts how her predecessors gave him the same speech. He assures her he told them exactly what he's telling her now, that she has his full support. After the meeting, O'Brien gets in her car, where her assistant shows her a photo. Henderson has been spotted in Madrid, sent there by Moore. Without hesitation, O'Brien quietly orders one of her own agents to follow him. Meanwhile, Charlie and Inquiline gain access to surveillance from the hotel where Mishka is staying. As they analyze the footage, Charlie grows uneasy. He warns that the CIA could already be tracking him and decides he needs to stay mobile. Before leaving, he tells Inquiline to keep monitoring Henderson, knowing he's been sent after him. The next day, Charlie arrives at the hotel. He learns that Mishka regularly swims at the rooftop pool at night, so he begins studying the pool structure, paying close attention to its glass enclosure. Meanwhile, Henderson continues closing in. A day later, in the hotel lobby, Charlie notices someone watching him and quietly alerts Inquiline through his earpiece. She quickly confirms the man is CIA. Moments later, she adds that Henderson is nearby and urges him to abort immediately. But Charlie sticks to the plan. That night, Charlie approaches Mishka at the rooftop pool and calmly asks about Schiller's location, making it clear Schiller is responsible for his wife's death. Mishka says nothing, only staring back coldly. Charlie pulls out a remote and explains it controls a device that has been slowly removing pressure between the glass panels of the pool. He warns that pressing the button will cause the glass to shatter. Mishka panics and tries to escape. Charlie presses the button. The glass gives way, and Mishka falls 16 stories to his death. Inquiline immediately guides Charlie to the safest exit. But on his way out, Henderson ambushes him. Another CIA agent suddenly intervenes, leading to a brutal fight between them. Henderson eventually kills the agent, but not before taking a fatal wound himself. As he collapses, bleeding out, Charlie hesitates, wanting to help, but Inquiline's voice cuts in, telling him he has to leave now. Reluctantly, Charlie runs. The next day, Director O'Brien calls Moore into her office. Calmly, she asks where Charlie is. Moore lies, claiming Charlie is still on bereavement leave, but O'Brien clearly doesn't believe him. Meanwhile, Caleb and his team review hotel footage and realize Charlie didn't act alone. One agent digs deeper into Charlie's encrypted communications and finds a message referencing Inquiline, suggesting he once guessed they were a middle-aged man based in Istanbul. Later that day, Charlie is seen feeding turkeys. Inquiline asks how he's holding up. He simply smiles. She opens up, explaining that after her husband died, she filled the silence with work, then gently asks if Charlie really wants to fill his silence this way. Back at the CIA, the truth begins to surface. The real Inquiline is dead, and intelligence suggests his wife may have taken over his identity and is now helping Charlie. Caleb immediately alerts the Russian embassy in Istanbul. That night, Inquiline quietly asks Charlie if she can sleep beside him. He hesitates for a moment, then agrees. But minutes later, the sudden noise of turkeys outside breaks the silence. Inquiline rushes to her system and realizes agents are closing in. She quickly wipes all sensitive data. Together, they escape through the back just as agents storm the property. Drones track them from above, while boats give chase. In the chaos, Inquiline is shot. Charlie manages to escape, driving until he reaches a quiet garage, where he finally breaks down over her death. The next morning, despite the weight of everything, Charlie keeps moving forward. Following her plan, he buys a new phone and contacts Elish, posing as a seller offering cheap weapons. The next day, he travels to Romania. At the meeting point, he records a video and hacks a surveillance feed in Berlin to mislead the CIA. Shortly after, Elish arrives, drawn by a ringing phone. Charlie instructs him to open a box he claims contains weapons. Instead, Elish finds explosives wired to detonate with movement. Charlie forces him to look at a photo of Sarah and demands Schiller's location. Elish reveals Schiller operates in Russian waters and receives shipments through a Baltic port. He explains that Schiller communicates through coded messages sent to two men, Simon and Christoph. Charlie takes his phone and walks away. Charlie arrives near the Baltic port and rents a small room, while also managing to solve the puzzle Sarah had left behind for him. The next day, he spots a suspicious vehicle nearby and sends coded messages to both of Schiller's known contacts. Soon after, one of the three men checks his phone, likely leading Charlie straight to Schiller. He follows carefully, but eventually loses sight of him, so he shifts focus to the remaining men, capturing a photo of the small boat they use. As he slips into a nearby cafe, he's suddenly approached by the bear. The agent tells Charlie he came on his own, without orders, and urges him to stop before it's too late. He reminds him this isn't what Sarah would have wanted. Charlie quietly responds that he can't go home because she's not there anymore. That night, Charlie buys a smartwatch and a few tools, then tracks the yacht using the boat's registration details. The following morning, he approaches one of the men again, asking about his partner, but gets nothing in return. Later that night, he studies maps and shipping routes, narrowing down Schiller's possible movements. The next morning, Charlie is suddenly ambushed, captured, and taken aboard the yacht. Face to face with Schiller, Charlie is questioned about who sent him. He insists he's acting alone and reveals he's only there to avenge his wife. Schiller coldly explains that Sarah's death wasn't personal, it was just part of a message meant for authorities. He points out that Charlie doesn't kill directly, noting he used traps to eliminate the others. To prove his point, Schiller hands him a loaded gun and dares him to shoot. Charlie tries, but once again, he can't pull the trigger. Instead, Charlie calmly reveals his real plan. He's already taken control of the yacht. Schiller laughs, dismissing it, saying the vessel is CIA-operated and secure. But Charlie explains that he helped design its encryption systems. By using the phone numbers tied to Schiller's men, he exploited a hidden backdoor in the system. With that access, he rerouted the yacht into Finnish waters, where authorities are already waiting. Moments later, law enforcement boards the vessel and arrests Schiller along with his crew. The next day, Director O'Brien addresses the public as news spreads about the exposure of multiple illegal black ops operations, including drone strikes disguised as terrorist attacks. Several high-ranking CIA officials are arrested. She promises greater transparency moving forward. When asked about the whistleblower, she confirms that the individual is still within the agency. After everything, Charlie finishes his shift and is surprised to see Henderson waiting for him. Henderson tells him he's impressed and proud of what he managed to accomplish, something he rarely admits. He adds that they'll likely cross paths again someday before walking away. Later, Charlie visits Sarah's grave, finally taking a quiet moment with her. Then, he returns to the garage. Standing in front of the Cessna she gave him, he takes a breath, climbs inside, and starts the engine. This time, he finally takes it into the sky. He wasn't a spy. He wasn't a killer. He was just a man who refused to let the system forget his wife. The Amateur isn't just a spy thriller. It's a study of grief, intelligence, and what justice really costs. Charlie Heller isn't a killer. He's a codebreaker, and his weapon isn't force, it's patience. In a world where the CIA buries truth as quickly as it protects it, Charlie goes rogue, not to fight harder, but to think deeper. Every move is calculated. Every choice pulls him further into moral fog, where revenge starts to look a lot like obsession. Power here doesn't come from violence. It comes from understanding systems and knowing exactly how to break them. Flick fact number 1, based on a 1981 novel by Robert Little. This is a modern adaptation of a decades-old spy story. Flick fact number 2, Rami Malek plays a codebreaker, not a traditional action hero. The Amateur isn't about espionage saving the day. It's about what happens when intelligence goes rogue and grief refuses to stay buried. It trades explosions for introspection and chaos for calculation. On the Flick verdict scale, this movie is a must-watch. Watch with curiosity, smart, slow, and quietly intense. Bottom line, this isn't about revenge. It's about decoding justice. Drawn to stories where intelligence replaces instinct and morality isn't black and white. Flick Favorites dives into films that challenge how we think, not just what we feel. Comment below, would you trust the system or take justice into your own hands?